You're listening to the RAD podcast, an exploration of wealth, finance, business, and entrepreneurship, hosted by Dutch Mendenhall, founder of Rad Diversified.
Oh, hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Hard Money Podcast, or the Dutch Mendenhall Podcast, or the Rad Diversified Podcast. But we've been doing these podcasts, and we've been really getting some amazing information. We've had incredible people on, wealth experts and retirement experts and protecting your money experts and life experts and American rights experts and entrepreneurial experts and just people that, I think are really smart. People I know that have made money, people that have been successful, people that I know have gone through the trials and tribulations of life, right? And so, I was talking with the team about, just we constantly have people who want to get on the podcast, people who want to be a part of the podcast, but what are our priorities? Who do we want on our podcast? And I said to myself, the smartest woman, the strongest woman, in business that I've ever known in my entire life is Amy Vaughn, right? And Amy's been my business partner for over a decade. We're close friends. We're business partners. We've been through a crazy journey over the years together. And I thought, let me bring Amy on. Let me ask her some hard questions. Let me, break it down. Amy and I built a closing in, within the next 6 months, we'll be crossing the $100 million mark in our portfolio. We're just over 75 million in our portfolio now as real estate investors. We've built education companies together. We've built businesses together. We've seen the adoption of children together. She's adopted a child. I've adopted a child. I've seen Amy go through divorce over the years. I'm sure that's a subject she'll love to talk about that I'll bring up. But, one of the toughest people I've ever met in my life. And so, I think that not only does she know business inside and out, she knows life inside and out. So I think it'd be great for her to be able to share with you guys. So what's up, partner? Say hi to everybody.
Hey, everybody. How are you?
Everybody's good. You get a lot of responses when we're talking into the dead air of the Metro Web world and stuff.
Right.
But so Amy, quick question. We'll just get started right into it, right? What do you feel like is going on in the world right now? Like with politics, with money, with everything? Just give a general outlook. Like what do you think is happening?
General outlook, the world's going a little bit crazy. It's a little scary. Politics, I really do my best to stay away from. To be honest with you, but you know that. I would say I'm more liberal than anything. I'm not one-sided. I think you do right by others and you get right. As far as the money crisis and everything going on, I think it'll be a major benefit to us, but it's sad for a lot of Americans.
I think it's fascinating that you say you're more liberal than other people when I know you're more on the right side of the aisle than you would be on the left side of the aisle. So what do you mean by liberal? I
used to be more on the right side of the aisle. It's just with everything that's going on in the world now, I am definitely not so much on the right or the left side anymore.
Yeah, so you feel like you're more of like a libertarian, or you feel like what?
Yeah, absolutely.
To each their own, the rights, their life?
Yeah, to each their own, the rights, their life, absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what, we like to talk about. It's like what's happening in the world. I think the more you wanted to get into other people's business, the more you want to get into other people's lives, the more you want to, fluctuate, to other people, I think it becomes, I think it's overstepping our bounds as Americans. Like one of the things that I remember, like I took a lot of, history in college, and I took a lot of American, a lot of European history. I remember studying the Constitution. I remember one of the things is they said, one of the things that our Constitution was built for, even our government was built for, is to protect the voice, the minority voice, right? But you get the extreme lefts and you get the extreme rights. And so you get both of those sides where their voices, for me, are pretty annoying, and I feel like, but their voices have to be protected.
Right.
Because I think that's a freedom of speech. And so, I don't know, what do you think when, they talk about, the freedom of someone to be hateful or freedom of someone to be spiteful out there in the air? I mean, what do you think? I mean, I don't know how we get on this subject to start, but that's where we start.
I always think that you're supposed to treat others as you want to be treated, right? But I do think you have the right, if you want to be a hateful person, that's your right. At the end of the day, you'll answer to who you answer to, right? As far as telling people what they can and can't do, I don't think that's right with what's going on in our world right now at all.
Because we've been facing a lot of censorship. I don't know if you guys have seen that on our American Survivalist page, on some of our other pages when there's a Joe Rogan podcast. We just reposted the Gupta Rogan interview they did recently. We reposted sections a section of that, and then there's been other posts they've been censoring. What do you think about an America where companies have a right to do censorship?
I think it's wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's against our Constitution.
How do you think we got there?
The way the government's running now, I think the American population has become sheep.
Yeah.
Since COVID hit, everybody's following an order. And unfortunately, it's the masses, and that's what's happening right now, where companies think they can regulate and tell someone how to live their life. And it's scary.
And it's interesting because I've never been a conspiracy theorist. I've always been anti-conspiracy. I've always said, like, most conspiracies, if they were real, I said people aren't good enough to keep secrets, right? But what I've come to realize, like when I look at it and I study, I realize that a lot of conspiracies, they're not keeping it secrets.
Not anymore.
That's the thing, is like they make it legal. Like they make what I believe a lot of people talk about conspiracy. Like you talk about, one world government, or you're talking about only having one political mind, or you're talking about only having one philosophy, right? There's a lot of that go down the road. Now I know, politics isn't your favorite subject, but I'm happy to get into your favorite subject, right? Which is business. And I mean, your favorite, I don't know. I mean, maybe your son's your favorite subject. Probably your son's your favorite subject in the world. Yeah. Don't worry. We'll get into the DJ master in a minute, right? From a business standpoint, what do you think? Like when they start to control and censor us as our voices, right? And like we're not even trying to be political, right? We don't have a political movement. We're not into politics. We just believe in sharing information about wealth, entrepreneurialism, our rights as Americans. And our ability to, live the American dream. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating that like we of all people would be censored. Like we should be so far from the categories of censorship that it kind of blows my mind. Right. Blows my mind a little bit. What do you think about when they start trying to control businesses? What do you think that does to business in America?
It destroys it. Mm-hmm. I mean, people are losing. I mean, you see what's going on in the news now with the airlines, because they're requiring, the vaccination. So it's destroying America. So now you have people being stuck places, losing money, losing their jobs, and I guess it's a scary world that we live in now in America. And I think us as businesses, I mean, I know us in our business, we're going to keep fighting until the end. We're not going to allow them to censor us, and we have a right to do what it is that we do, and we're going to continually do it.
Yeah, I look at some of the censorship, that we face, which is micro compared to companies that like their mission is to fight for certain causes, and whether it's medical rights. I think most people that the vaccination's an interesting issue because for me, I'm a non-vaxxer. I believe in non-vaccination, but I don't. I was non-pharma a decade ago. Right. It has nothing to do with the vaccination. Actually, it just has to do with my medical rights and what I choose to do in life. But for me, it's fascinating because our rights as people, our medical rights as people, right, is now spilling over into our businesses, and like us as a company, like we'll hire civil rights lawyers and we'll do other things to make sure that like our people are never forced to be vaccinated. And the fascinating thing is we have many obviously team members that are vaccinated, and we support them. And I'm like that's your right, that's your choice, and I don't need to know whether you are or aren't. It's none of my business. But those who've opened the conversation or talk about it, like I'm all for supporting what people choose to do with their lives. With businesses, I think when big business starts, like what I see is like this marriage of you got government control and giant business control at the same time, and I think that washes out the individual and it washes out the individual entrepreneur, and it starts to take away their abilities to be. The more regulatory you put on small businesses, the more like we've broken through the small business barrier, right? We're no longer a small business. But to break through the small barrier from taxes, regulatory pressures, legal, all of the different things we had to do, there's a perfect storm just to make it through. Right. And I can't imagine being a brand new, fresh, like, let's say you just want to be a real estate investor. It's fascinating how hard that might be for a newbie or a beginner to be. I mean, what advice do you give to somebody trying to start out?
The best advice is to stick to what you're doing. Don't give up. Know your rights and fight for what it is that you're doing, because you can obviously get there. It's going to be a long journey. It's probably way harder now than it was, 10, 15 years ago when we started. But stick to it and work through it and just don't stop. Don't give up and don't let them, destroy your dreams.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely, like when you're going through the cycles of life, right? And you're trying to be an entrepreneur, you're trying to grow a business. There is a perseverance that you must do. I always say you have to move into the unknown.
Absolutely.
Like if you don't move into the unknown, you can't be an entrepreneur. And that's very difficult for a lot of people to do, is because people want to know. They want to have control. And granted, there's a lot of control in our business, but at the same time, there's also a moving into the next phase. It's like the first time we invested in a farm. What did you think the first time I told you we were going to buy a big, old, multi-100-acre farm when we've been doing
I thought you were crazy.
Residential properties forever?
Yeah, I really did. I didn't know where you were coming from with it. I'm like, what are you talking about? We just set this whole goal that we're going to be the biggest residential owner in tax deeds and liens in the United States. But then, I kind of started looking into it, and with everything that was going on, it truly made sense, right? Because really by buying that, what we really created was something for the average American that normally they wouldn't be able to afford, right? Or invest in, yeah. So to me at first, I literally thought you were crazy. I'm like, okay, this is out of our wheelhouse. But then at the same time, you look at the numbers and I'm like, it's just real estate, right? It's not a house, but it's real estate. So in the end, obviously, we bought it.
Yeah, I think that's a really unique social dynamic. Like over the years, we've been in business with many other businesses, and we've had partnerships that made good money and partnerships that didn't. Yeah. We had another business partner, right? Mm-hmm. And I think over the years, I think you learn like partnership dynamics. I think that's a really important thing for people to understand. Is like when I said we're going to do income producing farms, I said, supply chain breaking down with other things that are happening in the world. I watched the billionaires buying land, buying farms and different things. I gave you, it wasn't like I said, we're just going to buy income producing farms.
Right.
There's a little more explanation than that. But I think, there's the partnership dynamics where like one of our rules is we say yes.
Right.
So, and I think that's like, yes, let's look into it. Yes, let's go dive deeper. Yes, let's enable. Yes, let's get behind each other. Let's support each other. And that's a partnership dynamic that we have is really special and unique. Because I've been in a lot of partnerships, done a lot of joint ventures in business, and that's not common to find. You find a lot of partners in business for people, and I think these are lots of times destined for failure, where they say no. Mm-hmm. They say no. What would you tell people like who are in, like, I think a lot of people are getting into business, look at partnerships as a path or an avenue because somebody has a skill set they do, somebody maybe has more money and they have more time or different things. What would you say to people? Like, what are some of your partnership rules?
One of the biggest thing is, because obviously you're on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, right? So that's usually the biggest question I get. Right. Was on the West Coast, but for years people are like, how do you make that work, right? And one of the biggest golden rules has always been in our business that, I have to trust that you're working just as hard as I am at all times, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're in a partnership, that is key. I think it's also really important that you enable your business partner, right? That you uphold them because look, we've been through a lot, right? And you have had crazy ideas over the years and that seemed crazy, right? Until we really sat down and looked at the numbers. And I'm glad I've always been that person in our partnership where I've always been, let's go ahead. Let's try it. Let's beta test. Let's see what happens, right? And that's what you have to do. Like you don't get successful by following the red line. You know what I mean? Just walking real slow down it. You get successful by taking risks and going outside of the box, right? And allowing things to happen. And some things are going to fail. But honestly, we've learned from every failure that we've had, right? So anything that we haven't, I don't really think we've ever failed at anything, but anything that hasn't been truly successful to us has only taught us better in the next project that we've done. So I think in a partnership, it's trust.
I don't think we've ever run a business or started a business that didn't succeed. I think we've stopped businesses because there wasn't a longer term or bigger
right. There was no bigger plan for it. Yeah.
Like I've seen, like I remember years and years ago, we had 11 income sources and we slowed down and realized that like each of those income sources were capping out because there wasn't the ability to expand beyond and scale that many different income sources, that many different business lines in different ways. And so for us, getting smaller was actually better. And trying to do less. Like even today, there are literally two things that our business sells and everything else we let go of, and that's helped us scale to, 8 figures and we're closing in, on the 9th figure, which is a big number. The ninth one's a big number, right? And so, very different. I think one of my partnership dynamics, right, is the default to the right. And I mean the right, like default to you doing what's right, default that you're doing your best to do what's right, default to you're making the best decision you know how, default to you're taking the best action you do. I think there's one of my partnership dynamics is like, no matter what I'm frustrated with, or no matter what we're working hard on, or no matter what we're going through. I remember recently we were in a marketing meeting and two of the staff members were saying things to me like that they had, they believe, you wanted them to go do from a marketing standpoint. And those things were counter to what, our philosophy is, counter to what our belief is. Plus, they don't directly report to you. And my mind went back to instantly to that default of, I already know what she said. I already know what that conversation was because they were off on how they perceived it or how they ran it, And so I went directly deep into that. What other kind of partnership things do you feel like, you stick to feel good and continue, especially when we've been running on separate coasts?
Right. Well, it's really important to separate the rules, right? I mean, that is huge and to allow that, right? And then again, that goes to trust, right? So kind of like what you just said is marketing reports to you. Now they can call me, I will give them ideas, but I will never give them a yes or a no. It'll say go Dutch. But that is huge in our business, and same with a consultant. You know what I mean? It's knowing your role, and again, it goes back to that trust, right? Don't overcross what your partner's working on.
Yeah, boundaries.
You have to have boundaries.
Yeah. If you're out there and you've never read like boundaries in marriage, boundaries in business, boundaries with kids, if you've never read those books, and then when we cross the boundaries, which inevitably happens in business, right? It's like, how do you handle it? It's for me, it's like if I cross the boundary, I'm like, yeah, I crossed the boundary.
Right. It's just owning it, right?
It's immediate ownership, right? And that's, I think, a huge one for us too. I think immediate ownership. Like when, doesn't matter what it is, it's like,
it can be simple. Yeah. It's just owning it and moving on.
Yeah. Because if you don't own it, it festers.
Right.
It festers. And that's a conversation you and I were having recently. We were talking about, hey, if you live in dysfunction, right? If your business has something that is dysfunctional, and you've learned to operate with that piece of dysfunction, right? You're never going to scale and grow your business. You've got to eliminate dysfunction, because dysfunction is just like a cancer, right? It's a seed that'll grow, it'll eat away and at the psyche of things. What other partnership dynamics?
I mean, those are really the main ones for me. I think also in a partnership, I mean, you and I are very much alike, but then we are very different in essence too, right? And it's really knowing your strengths. Like if you're going to get in partnership with somebody, like one of my major strengths and why we partner is management, right? And that's not a big strength of yours. And your big strength is being able to speak on stage in front of thousands of people and doing camera, and that's natural for you, where for me, that's not what Amy likes to do. So it definitely has to have that difference, right? Where what I am not good at, my partner's good at, right? Where I can focus and excel. A lot of people say, I'll get better at that and work on that. Where with us, it's like, I don't want you to get better at that. I want you to get better at what you're already great at, and I make up for that lack. And same with you, what I'm not good at and what you're great at, you keep being great at it, right? And I think that's where a lot of people fail in business. They try to become everything when there's no need. Find that right partner that offsets what you're not good at, and that's how you really excel, and that's what we do.
Yeah. It's fascinating though as you go through a decade, right? Because then there's things that like evolve over the years. Like I've realized that like from our social media standpoint, you're more popular than me, right? The automatic default of whatever, the image or the brand or the different things with you has made you extremely popular. But I think therein lies, another partnership rule is like that excites me, right? There's not an ego trip like shit, I'm supposed to be the face of the brand and I'm supposed to be the popular part of the company, right? Like I'm excited by that. You don't love it, right? Because you don't love to be that's not, that attention part's not yours. So, how did you feel like when you realized like
that you were doing that?
Yeah.
And I didn't know about it?
Yeah.
I couldn't be mad because I kind of knew it was coming because you've been pushing me towards it for a long time. But I liked it and I didn't like it. But at the same time, I had to step outside of myself and my own beliefs and who I am and look at the bigger picture of the company and our staff and our investors and realize that that's a need in the market, right? So with me knowing that, I'm okay with it, right? So I just had to surrender to that. And that's the other thing in business, right? There's sometimes that you have to surrender and you have to get outside of your box and do things that you're not used to.
It's fascinating because like for me, the financial world, right? The investment world, the how to be an investor, or like the Wall Street world and all those things. It's really a landscape dominated by white males, right? And I'm not about just to be crystal clear. I'm not going to go down the whole white males are bad human beings conversation, because it's an ignorant conversation.
Right.
Because frankly, for every white male that you hate, there were more white males fighting for every right that everybody has in America, right? And I have been one of those that have fought for that my entire life. So anyways, that's to digress down that rabbit hole. So I think it's fascinating, because one of the things that I really wanted your voice out there was because I feel like the female voice of investments and the female voice of finances, like I feel like it's underheard, and for me, like without the powerful women in our business, I couldn't have created or built anything that big. That goes from, Molly running property management, or Vanessa running media buying, or Taylor running, the office of the president, or Adrian managing, the teams in Florida, or just the different females. And so, for I actually remember a dinner not that long ago you told me about with another education investment company, right? And with we'll call them dudes, right? Two dudes. And, they were wanting, seeking to do business with us and different things. And so, you had a dinner with them, and they made you uncomfortable, Talk about a little bit about like what that's like being a female businesswoman, because men, I have no idea.
Right. Even
though I might think I do, I don't.
Right.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Unfortunately, and I've been in this business, and it is a male-dominated business, right? The uncomfortableness of it is, and I've dealt with it my whole life. This particular time, though, is because of where I'm at in my life now, and I've earned where I've gotten to, right? It wasn't given to me. I built it from the ground up with you. And it was just the things that were said. It was belittling, basically. Oh, you did this to get to the top, and you did this to get to the top. And it's just wrong, right? And it happens all the time to women. And it was very hard, because at the same time, I own a business, right? So I could done one or two things at that dinner. Part of me wanted to punch them both right in their face, you know what I mean, and get up and walk away.
It's a good thing you're 10 years older.
Right, absolutely.
Because 10 years ago,
I would have probably, yeah. But I had to look at the bigger picture, right? I had to look at where is their value to my business? Is there value with them for my investors, right? So unfortunately, you have to eat that sometimes, right? And you eat stuff all the time too. But yeah, as a woman, you do. And I'm not going to lie, like my ride home that night, tears fell. And I'm not a crier. I'm a pretty strong woman, but it just hits you in the wrong way, because when you work the way that you do as a woman in this type of industry, and you grind the way that you do, and you're at the top finally, and someone talks to you like that, and you're better than them, they need you and you don't need them, it kind of taps on your ego a little bit. But by the time I got home, I was good. You know what I mean? I thought through it and worked it out, and I called you, and you're like, oh, I would kill them. But yeah, I mean, it is hard.
So guess we're not doing business with.
Right, absolutely, yeah. Which for me, it was the game changer, right? Because years ago, when things like that would happen, they still did business with them, right? So when I called you and told you what happened, that was the best feeling in the world to me. Whether they brought hundreds of millions of dollars to us, it was irrelevant because of how they treated me, right? Which was actually that was a big change for us in our business too. Because normally I didn't go do those dinners unless you were with me because of those reasons.
Yeah.
And they could have been a big client. But the fact that you put my self-respect and my worth above that spoke volumes to me that night.
I think in business, when you're getting started, you're pushed so hard to succeed, right? Certain things you're not going to pay attention to because you're pushing so hard to succeed. But I've realized, over years and years of being in business with you, like, you gotta let go of the little gain, like the momentary, like the instant gain that you think you might have from something if it crosses the long-term line. Right. And I think that's one of those things when you, over the years, you have to make the long-term decisions with immediate action. And always immediate action is huge, because if you're not doing the long-term, and it goes back to that dysfunction. Yeah. If you allow a seed of dysfunction in your life or business now, it's going to eat you up later, and then it'll just grow and get worse, worse and worse and worse. I think that's really, really important as you look at the whole scope, as you look at the whole game. Now, for us, we've gone past the point where we have to do business with anybody, right? Right. Like we don't have that urge or that need. And so really, I think a lot of times for us, it comes down to more of people and our people. And I think that's one of the most important values of our company. So talk about like your philosophies when it comes to our people, comes to our teams, when it comes to what's going on. Because as you're growing a business, as you're building something, it's like, what are our people?
Yeah. I mean, our people, you start with our staff, right? Yeah. Bottom line is without our staff, we don't have a business, right? And our staffs are our equals, right? We're the owners of the company, but we will do any job that our staff does. We go in our offices, we do the auctions, right? So I think a lot of businesses fail at that as they grow, right? People become numbers instead of becoming the people who they are. And we've prided ourselves on never doing that. And I think that's where a lot of businesses fail. As far as my students, most students that know me know that I have a huge passion with our students. I've walked away from $1 million jobs because they didn't take care of their students. So did you. That's how we met. But my students are everything to me, right? Because without them, I don't have a business either. And the reality is if we take care of our investors and our students, our business is going to continually thrive. So that I would say that's probably my biggest thing in this business is to always make sure our students and our investors are happy. And to keep my thumb on that and to keep that open line of communication. And I know you do that too. They all have our cell phone numbers, right? But I think that's huge in business is knowing who your foundation is, knowing that your employees and your staff are your core of your group, right? Like we can be the best owners and be great at what we do, but if we don't uphold our staff and bring them up and raise them up to be entrepreneurs like we have and own their positions, we would never be where we're at today, And the same with our investors. If we didn't be ethical with our investors, and make sure they didn't lose money, where we lose the money before them, our business wouldn't be where it's at today.
There's a lot of freedom in that, in the admission of being real, right?
Yeah.
Like that, like a mission of imperfection, a mission of ownership of flaw, right? Mm-hmm. And I think within your people, right? If you try to act as that you're perfect, right? Then you become untouchable. Right. And the moment you become untouchable, you lose touch with reality. Yeah. I think that centered approach, I think over the years is very real with our people. I think for me, whether it's investors, students, or our staff and team, like people earn their place. Right. And I think it's not a place that's given because I think we didn't ever have anything given to us. No. And so I think that's maybe a part of that kind of equation too. Talk to me about like life's ups and downs. It's gonna be your favorite part of the whole podcast. Life's ups and downs and still being a businesswoman, right? Starting a family, going through a divorce, right? Just different things you've been through. I've seen you through it. A decade ago, I've seen you through an adoption 5 years ago. It's been 6 years with DJ.
Almost 7.
Almost 7 years with DJ. And so talk about trying to build a life as a woman, being a businesswoman, trying to build a life as a woman, being a businesswoman, because it's not always easy. And I'll tell you one thing that I know for sure: there's a lot of weak men in the world who aren't ready for a strong woman.
Right.
And that has to be really difficult as a businesswoman.
It is. It was. I'm on my second divorce, right? Both for those reasons, actually. So it wasn't anything that I did wrong. It was just that I am a strong woman. I know what I want in life. I know who I am. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And it will take a strong man, and maybe he exists, maybe he doesn't, but that's okay. But yeah, I've been through a lot of things in my life. And I would tell you with all of those downfalls, I guess since I've been a kid, at this point in my life now, I look at everything bad that happened as a learning lesson, right? So the first divorce just made me the stronger woman that I am now, right? And obviously made me a little too strong for the last husband because he couldn't handle that either, right? And my son, the one blessing with that is I always wanted to be a mom, right? But I was a businesswoman from 20 years old and I traveled, and business came first all the time and family and everybody else before me. And a couple years back, I finally decided that's what I wanted and best thing I ever did in my life, right? So that just changed all of my goals, right? My first goals, which was taking care of my grandmother and my cousin, which I still do. And that's really all I worked towards, right? It was never working towards what Amy wanted or things like that. In the last 2 years, you've helped me a lot make that transition to finally put me first instead of everybody else. Mm-hmm. I don't put myself first still, but it's up there at a higher level than what it was before. But you have to go through trials and tribulations in life to get there, right? And you don't have to believe in God, and that's okay as long as you're feeling higher. But for me, I've always lived by the rule of thumb that God only gives you what you can handle, and the hard things that He does put you through only makes you become the better person you are today. So I don't look at my divorces as things that are bad. I look at, the first one made me a strong woman. The second one gave me the most amazing gift in the world, right? I have an amazing son from that. And I have unconditional love, right? So, and as a businesswoman, it is hard because you try to run a business, you try to be a wife, you try to be a mom, right? And you run both ends, and men think, if you're a businesswoman, you still are supposed to come home and cook and clean and do all of these things that a wife's supposed to do. And it's just not how it's supposed to work. Women are equal to men. In a relationship like that, if it's two of you working, it's 50-50. You share, like you and your wife, you share all the responsibilities, right? And right, we have nannies and stuff, but it's just one of those things. It's one of those stigmas in societies, right? That a woman could work 80 hours a week and the man still expects her to work 40 hours at home, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not that woman. And I don't think any woman should be that woman. I think every woman should go for what they want to do in their life, no matter what. And your husband should support you, right? Or your significant, whoever it is. And if they don't, it's not worth it anymore. And I realized that in my marriage and I walked away from it, and again, that just made me a stronger woman.
I think the conversation you have right now is fascinating because I think it's controversial as heck, right? Because you got a lot of people out there that are like right on, and then you got people out there who can't understand,
right?
Because there's people who haven't been entrepreneurs, there's people who haven't been with someone who's extraordinarily strong, right? And so therein lies because I also know on the other hand, and this is the part probably some people are catching, is you believe in the strength of a man in a leadership position,
Absolutely.
And you believe in the strength of the power of a strong man, right? The stronger the man, the stronger the woman, the stronger the woman, the stronger the man, right?
Absolutely.
And that's kind of how my wife and I look at things. It's fascinating because as you go through that journey and you're trying to hold together, like my wife and I, we have, we fight for our successful marriage.
Absolutely.
We absolutely, we both have to have passion about having a good relationship. Because if you don't, eventually it's gonna
sizzle out.
Gonna sizzle out. And so it's fascinating because I know you have a lot of those. We have so many shared beliefs when it comes to those kind of things. How did you, when you went through the adoption and you brought DJ into your family and those kind of things, and now you had something maybe for the first time in your life that was more important than your business?
Yeah.
I know that your grandmother is, I know that, your cousin is, and some other people that there's a lot of people you take care of, no question. But at that point, how did you balance the two, knowing that there was something different than you'd ever experienced before? Because when Micah was born, when I adopted Tony, the dynamic was weird for me.
It was at first, but then it immediately went to legacy, right? Like now I looked at my son and his past life and said, he will never in life, whether I'm on this earth or not, go through any of that again, right? So honestly, it turned the volume up on the business for me and made me work 10 times harder and faster because I wanted us to grow even.
I think it made you work smarter.
Yeah, and you had to work smarter.
I mean, harder and smarter because I don't know that like at that point we both adopted around the same time.
Yeah.
Me after you. But at that point I don't think we had it in us to put in the intensive grind we once put because we had to put in intensive grind into our family for a while. Like when you've never, remember I used to laugh because people would ask us like, you guys got kids? And I'd be like, no. And like, that's why you're so successful. And I'd be like, that's why you're not successful.
Right.
Because even if you have that mindset or that thinking, like that's when you blame something for someone else's success or you blame something for your lack of success, you gotta blank out that shit. Yeah. Like that has to go to a clean slate.
Absolutely.
There's no reason for your success. There is no reason for your lack of success. Right. You either
do or you don't.
Act within successful steps or you don't. It's black and white.
It absolutely is.
So when you had that, how did it shift? I mean, you worked smarter.
I definitely worked smarter. And I think I kind of probably put myself more in a schedule. I always was the one I just kept myself available all the time for everybody. And then I did start to limit that, right? Because it was important to be present. And, you know, because you do the same thing to this day. I just make sure that there is that solid 2 hours a day of quality time with my son, you know, and he understands that, and he knows mom's a business owner and has to work. And our boys are taught that. They know when you're working on the phone, you know, be quiet. But it was just building off of that, right? But honestly, he gave me a completely different drive. Like, he humbled me and made me realize what was important in life, right? So instead of constantly looking at now, it kind of made you look like, okay, what's 20 years from now look like? And it did make us work smarter, right? Because now instead of grinding constantly, it was, how do I efficiently use my time? Where's my time best spent? And what am I doing that I shouldn't be doing that somebody else should be doing for us, right? So I think that was a major dynamic. You know that. I mean, I actually hired somebody to work in the house and do a lot of the things that I try to do everything. I did try to be that business owner and come home, cook, clean, and all of that, right? And I got burned out.
I used to get mad at you.
Yeah, you stayed mad at me.
I said, stop cooking. I said, stop cleaning. I said, stop doing dishes. I said, those are minimum, wage, or they're lower wage jobs. I said, I need you, to be rested and fresh, and we can pay someone to do those things. And that was, I think, over the years, but you've been through that a long time now.
A long time now.
But I know there was that letting go.
Right. And that's part of letting go of society roles. Right, and not being in that box, right? And that's
it's a lot
really
easier
all
for me
that
to
is.
justify with a wife and kids now. When I used to not want to do dishes and clean, and it was just me as a bachelor, 12 years ago.
A little bit different, yeah.
A little bit harder for me to justify.
Yeah.
I do know how to do dishes.
I do. I know how to do dishes too.
Just haven't done it in a long time.
I just don't know. Yeah.
We were talking about that dynamic, and what I saw when you were going through, like, I had this visualization kind of everything. What do you want me to adjust the mic?
Bring it down.
Got
Your
you.
face.
Got you. Right here?
Yeah.
Right there?
Right there.
You got it? All right. You guys always act like nobody's supposed to know you're over there. Everybody knows you're over there.
Can you choke up on the mic a little bit too?
Can I what?
Choke up on the mic a little bit.
Sure.
Closer. Thank you.
Got you, bro. So what the amazing part that I saw there was, I saw this kind of like this crystallization of reality when the game got more real. What some people use as an excuse, it's like kind of like when things get more serious or more important, it's like it gets more more clear for me.
Mm-hmm.
So like when I had kids, it got more clear for me. When I got married, it got more clear for me. As the game got bigger. And so like one of the things that had to become more clear for me is, we have, 60 lives, that make a paycheck, that go home to their families, take care of their kids, everything, and then 60 lives and turn into 100 before we know it. And those are, our team, right? The people that work with us. And so like a lot of things that you could use as an excuse, because I had less time, because I was more tired.
Mm-hmm.
Like crystallized, like visual, like made everything come more into focus. But I also spent more time on making things come more into focus on some of those things. What do you do to reset when you're worn out, when you have a conversation with two stupid assholes, right? Like, what do you do? Like, what's the reset?
Well, it depends on where I'm at. So if I'm here, I usually go sit on the beach for a little bit and just woosah, and I come back to the office. But another thing, honestly, I really do is something I taught my son because he has behavior. I do a pattern break. You walk away for 10 minutes, reset, and go back to it, right? Because I don't live in a negative world, and there's no need to. So I'm pretty good at moving through that kind of stuff now.
It's controlling those mental transitions.
Yeah.
I always make the joke, like I absolutely love being present with my kids, and I absolutely am able to do that because I also love not being present with my kids, right?
Right.
Like the hours I spend away from them allow me to spend quality hours
with them
of intensity with them, and because I love being a dad. I think it's a lot of joy and purpose, because I think for a long time it's like when you're first building wealth, it's like, I know that I was put on this earth to build entrepreneurs, put on this earth to help people with real estate investing. But there's not a personal mission in that, right? There's an external mission and different things. So it's definitely a changing of the guard for that, for sure.
Yeah.
What do you think as we go from, we're going to go from 60 employees to 100 in the next 6 months? We've gone from 30 to 60 in the last 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I just know the speed at which, we're growing. our funds, at which we're growing our portfolios, right? The scalability. What do you think some of the biggest hurdles we're going to face in the next, 12 to 24 months are?
I think the biggest hurdles are merging the people who've been with us from the very beginning that are set in their ways is definitely a little bit of a hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
The training aspect of it and just the growth of it, right? It makes you run like, obviously you've been here in Florida for the last week, so you see it's crazy. But at the same time, it's so exciting, right? So I try not to look at, my rule of thumb, to every problem there's 3 solutions, right? So I don't really think that it's going to be a bad thing. Yeah, it stays there. It's all over. I don't know. I'm actually not scared of it. I'm actually truly excited about it because it's fresh people, it's fresh ideas, and we're smart enough owners that we hire people smart enough in the positions, right, that are better than us to do it. So I'm actually really excited for it. So to me, with what's going on in this world, we have the opportunity to give people amazing jobs and careers, right, an entrepreneurial mindset and unlimited income. So I think it's absolutely awesome.
Yeah. My biggest transition for me personally, because I spent so much time being visionary of like leading the charge, of creating new things, of coming up with new ways of doing things, of doing deep dives, deep research. I'm a crazy insane researcher.
Yeah.
Is I have to, like, all those years of coaching college baseball, right? I have to lead and be present, just like I am with my sons, right? Be present with individual team members on a regular basis, because when I'm not, there's a disconnect between where we're headed and what we're doing and different things. And so that's the thing for me. I have to constantly go back, like, I got to be present with our leader of investor relations, got to be present with accounting, got to be present with our loan department, be present with our residential real estate, be present with our farm department, right? And be present with you, right? And in our conversations and our meetings of what needs to be done or what's happening. So I think that's one of the big things for me. I don't know, what else should we bring up today? I mean, there's the movement, right? I'm moving to Florida, right?
Yeah.
And so that's, a conversation we've been having with our tribe, or been having on the podcast for a little while. I just think the world has gotten to such a place, both economically and politically, where we're going to do that. I mean, can you even handle, me not being all the way across the country?
I'm actually excited that you're coming here. Well, yeah. I mean, when we get together and we're at the auctions, like, every time we're together, we come up with $1 million ideas or a new system or new ways to do things, right? And it's different. Like, obviously we talk 20 times a day half the time, but when we're together, it's just that different synergy. So I'm actually looking forward to it, because you don't have a lot of, you just don't have a lot of people like that in your life, right? At that mental level. And I have great people in my life, don't get me wrong, but the way that I think is how you think, right? So I'm truly excited about it, to be honest with you. I think our business is going to grow even faster with you being here.
Okay. I can take that.
Right.
Well, I think that's a wrap for today, everybody. Thank you for taking the time. I know this isn't your favorite medium of conducting business, but I think people really need to hear from you, right? What was the last thing you'd tell, the entrepreneurs, the investors, that are out there that listen to us? What was the last, what's your big, parting piece of advice for all?
My biggest advice would say, never give up, never stop. Never let the negativity get to you. And at the end of the day, strive to be your very best, be ethical in business. And as long as you do that, you're going to get there. And if you get there too fast, you didn't do it right. So take your time. Nothing great comes easy. So never believe that.
All right, everybody, it's a wrap.
Thank you for listening to the RAD podcast, an exploration of wealth. For more information, please visit our website, www.raddiversified.com. We'd love to hear from you. Please leave us a review and let us know how we're doing.